Look, I am going to show my age here, but the entire episode, I just kept thinking, ring goes on, ring goes off, ring goes on, ring goes off, ring goes on, ring goes off. And if you know what I'm referencing there, I adore you. Hello, interwebs, I hope you're all doing well, and welcome to my review of the season finale of the second season of The Lord of the Rings of Power. I hate to be that kind of person that goes, this is my favorite episode every episode, and certainly that hasn't been the case of every episode this season. I think it's definitely had some ups and downs, and I'm only saying this because I thought last week's episode was perhaps not only the strongest of the season, but the strongest of the series so far, and I think that this episode actually tops it, if that is going to give you an idea of what this review is going to be like for me. That being said, I will say that the journeys to get to every single endpoint that we get to in this season finale do not all land for me and are not the strongest. However, for most storylines, with the notable exception of one, actually two that are kind of related, we'll get there, with the notable exception of two, almost every single end point that we hit this season actually got like some strong emotions out of me, and I found myself kind of not crying and weeping at any point, but feeling like, oh man, that's hitting me. It's hitting me in the feels, and I thought it was a very strong ending that managed to, I think, land the right mix of tragedy, despair, and hope that I think are central to a lot of Tolkien's ideas and themes. And I think especially for this season, given that, you know, it was very clearly leading to a darker end, given where we go with Sauron's story and Middle Earth generally in this age of the world, the second age, as they say. I think it just mixed all those things really, really well, and managed to create an ending that felt tragic, felt sad, and yet had that glimmer of hope. And there was a repeated visual throughout the episode. I think there was like a symbol in the sky that it was representing. I forgot what it was, but tell me in the comments. But there was a repeated visual in this episode where we went up to the night sky and we saw the stars in the sky. And it reminded me again of, I think I might have mentioned this a few times, but it reminded me again of my favorite passage in Lord of the Rings, where Sam is on Mount Doom and all seems lost. And Frodo has gone off, I believe, to toss the ring in. And he looks up and he sees the stars and he says, you know, there's always light. There's always hope that the darkness cannot touch. And I think that visual motif throughout the episode was meant to echo that. And I think that that's kind of the point of where this season ends, that there is darkness, but there's always light. And I think sometimes they hit the nail on the head a little bit with that point, but I think Tolkien, it fits very well within those themes. And I found it to be a really moving ending that had a lot of really strong character beats and moments that, again, the journey to get to all of those moments was not always the strongest, but I think on the back of how much I like the characters, I like the arcs, and just the little moments and nuances of this series, I think it really hit, and I think that this was a very strong second season. Not perfect by any means, but no show is, and I think there's a lot of room for improvement on the show, but it definitely improved from seasons 1 to 2. There's not going to be a season review, but I'll focus on the episode. But just speaking generally, it's improved season 1 to 2, and it has me very excited for season 3. If they can continue this upward trend, I'm very pumped. Even though a lot of now we're going to get into spoilers, a lot of the characters that I really loved did not make it through this one. So let's kind of break it down. Let me start off with the storyline that I think was the weakest for me, and it's going to shock no one, and that is going to be the Númenórean storyline. The quick fall into like Farazan's like, all right, we're gonna do a little fascism here, and we're gonna say they're working with Sauron, all the followers of this queen, and even though the gods themselves said that she was chill, they were gonna hunt them down, and they're all labeled enemies of the state. So just a little bit of fascism on Númenor, you know. And again, that point is fine, and I don't mind. That seemed like the smart direction for Númenor to go. And again, it's one that feels a bit more natural and thought out than last season, the storyline with them. But it doesn't land as strong just because I think it's because, and again, I know Tolkien works in sort of broad strokes, but fascism is not that fast of a thing. And while the season has built up some level of like, Farazan centralizes his power and things like that, it's all felt too quick. And I think it's just the failure of this show being 8 episodes that like, all right, we're gonna go full on fascism now, that it doesn't land. And the character of Karaman, whatever the K name character is, he's such a cartoonish level of dick that it's that it's just hard to really buy into the storyline. But the moments with the Isildur having to run away works very well. And then it kind of ties into the second storyline here, where we have Isildur, Theo, and what's her name that was branded with Sauron's mark, who I completely forget her name, and I forgot she even really existed for a hot minute in this show. We're gonna jump over to that storyline, and again, I don't really care. Isildur is fine. I have a little bit of investment in him, but Theo and the other girl really have no strong investment in whatsoever. The beat where the Númenóreans come over and say, hey, you're now working for us, you're gonna give us your resources, again, very like imperialist, fascistic, more imperialistic there, though those two things aren't mutually exclusive, sort of element. Again, works on a broad strokes political level, but on a character beat level, like Isildur being like, you very cartoonish asshole who used to be a friend of mine. I'm just like, all right, fine, whatever. Cool enough in terms of getting us to the where Numenor is going to be going, if you know, you know. But frankly, as a storyline, I wasn't really feeling it all that much. But it gets us to where we need to be, I guess, is ultimately where that shakes out. Moving on to the next storyline that I think is a step up, and we'll get to the big stuff in just a minute, but a step up is we get the Gandalf, Nori, Hobbit, Harfoot, whatever you want to call them, storyline. This was a little bit better for me. I liked the confrontation between the stranger, and we'll get to who he is in a minute, and the evil wizard, which is a name he rejects. And again, it was a very similar dynamic to Gandalf and oh my god, Saruman in the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, where Saruman is like, oh, we can if we work with Sauron, we can take it over and pull one over on him, and we can do maybe some bad deeds will be done along the way, but we'll make it all right in the end. And it kind of makes this same pitch here, this evil wizard. I do hope that he doesn't end up being Saruman, because it would weaken it later on if Gandalf kind of falls for the same thing, or not falls for the same thing, but befriends Saruman, and then oh yes, Saruman does the same thing again. What a shock to me. And they kind of act surprised in Lord of the Rings. It's like, well, if he did it years and years ago, would it have happened again? So hopefully he's like a blue wizard. I doubt he's going to be Radagast, so he has to be a blue wizard at this point. So I am curious whether they're ultimately going to go with a storyline, or he could just be a liar. He could be a complete liar. Obviously, he's a liar if we learned in this episode that a wizard chooses his name and the staff finds him, and the evil wizard said, oh, I can help you with that, and tell you your name. But obviously, that is a lie if that's not how it works. So, he could just be an outright liar and not be a wizard, any of the 5 wizards that we know. So, there's some storyline there with him, but I do like the way he's presenting this deal to Gandalf as, again, I'll just say it, that's who he is, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So I like the way he presents that, and I like the very Tolkien-esque, I'll kill these people who I was using. I was just using them. They weren't, I didn't know that they would be such baddies, and then just murders them outright. And I like this point of the ends don't always justify the means. If this is your type of action, just murdering people outright with force, the people who even work for you, then is that the kind of person that we want to be standing with? And Gandalf and Poppy and Nori sort of shoving that away. I thought that a very Tolkien-esque theme. A little, again, broad strokesy, which is why it doesn't work as much for me, because the wizard does that and Poppy and Nori do not get murdered outright. Like, the guy just runs away. He could have easily slit their throat and run. Just as easily. So yeah, it's the beat by beats of it don't work as much for me. However, we get to the end of the episode, and I again, beat for beat, the whole idea of like, oh, they're leaving. Oh, and by the way, when the wizard breaks off the like entire rock wall and starts dropping at people, looks really cool. And I like the fact that some of the Harfoots do die. A lot of the time when something like that happens, you like the Gandalf character will save everybody. But no, here it's some of them do die. And so I do like that there's some tragedy in that. He can't save them all, but he does a decent job of saving a good amount. But then when we get to them leaving, it did well up in me when Nori and Poppy said, well, when Nori said goodbye, Poppy just kind of walks away. It was like, don't be a stranger, wink, wink. Just very on the head line there, but just kind of walks away. And I found myself feeling like, I don't really feel as much for her. But the goodbye between Nori and our Grand Elf, I thought was, it did really, really hit me. And I liked Poppy's speech about sometimes you can't fix things. Sometimes things are just broken, you have to build something new. And that's, again, a very beautiful Tolkien-esque theme of like, you can't always fix things. Sometimes things get destroyed. And there was the montage that goes over that was very strong. But what I like the most, and again, maybe it's the transness in me, is Gandalf having to find his staff and choose his own name. And he picks it after the what the Harfoots call him, Grand Elf. I thought that was a clever little bit, and it really landed for me. And I like that idea of ownership of identity. It can't be someone dictating it to you. Again, maybe that's me just reading the transness and choosing your name and choosing your identity, and choosing friends and connection over power. But that's I'm glad that theme is in here. It's a very Tolkien-esque theme, and it's a very trans theme. What a beautiful thing. We love it. We stan. So I thought that moment, that whole concept worked really well. Though when Nori like throws off the staff at one point, I was like, that's going to be his staff. It's too nice and too prominently placed to stick for that not to be his staff. So yeah, the stranger is Gandalf. Again, not shocked. I kind of had a little hope that it was Saruman just to give us a little bit of twist in there, to kind of show that Saruman was a good guy until the Lord of the Rings. But no, he's straight up Gandalf. Not going to shock anybody, which I think is a little bit like, all right, you wasted 2 seasons for the thing that we all kind of guessed by episode 3 or 4 of season 1. But we got there, and the road was ever winding and very long, but I did like where we ultimately land on it emotionally. So good there. Let's get into some of the stronger stuff. Let's go start off with the Balrog of it all, with the dwarves. That opening scene with the Durins and the Balrog, that was fantastic. Durin the Fourth pleading with his father to take off the ring and said, I was never as strong as you, and them opening is like, a dwarf should never plead, in this sort of like this diminishment of his son. But then when the Balrog comes, and again, oh my god, it looks so fucking cool. He does take off the ring and sort of says, that was you getting stronger. Like, beautiful moment that I think encapsulated their relationship. And then just it's an epic shot, but also slightly goofy in a way that I like. I always like the sort of like dwarfs jumping into battle, like hop that they sometimes do in like pictures and things, if you look at fantasy books. So this like the Durin jumping into the battle with the Balrog and smacking his whip, I thought was just a really badass image, and also slightly goofy. I will say there's an element in me that's like, well, I wish there had been a little bit more in that scene, just to really draw out the like love between the two of them and the beats between the two of them. It all works, and I think it's really good, but it feels like there was a beat missing in there, but emotionally between those two, that I would have really liked, like maybe a glimmer of hope from Durin the Elder, before he's like, no, a dwarf should never beg. But we don't really get that. So when he takes off the ring later, it was like, it's kind of a little bit impromptu. It's not like he's really worried for Durin. He just sort of chooses to do it at that point. Like, and I think that was another beat that was missing. Like when Durin gets smacked back by the Balrog, I would have liked Durin the Fourth to like really like have a beat of like concern. We don't really, the camera doesn't linger on that moment, and we can infer it, but it doesn't let the beat super land. So I think maybe even in the edit, if we had gotten a little bit more of that, I think it could have hit a little bit harder. Again, it all works and is functional and it feels epic, but I would have liked a little bit more of those beats just kind of upped a little bit in there to really give us the full arc in that scene. But as it stands, a really strong opener to the episode. But that brings us to the sort of more lengthy discussion, which is all the elf and Sauron shit. I'm going to kind of speed run a lot of it because there's a lot to talk about and I've already been going for a while here. Loved the last Celebrimbor scene. Sauron just sort of messing with his arrows, like shoving his body full of arrows. If you read what happens to Celebrimbor in the Silmarillion, it's not too far off. I mean, it's a lot crueler what happens to Celebrimbor in the books. So that was a bit rough. However, and I love all of Celebrimbor's speech in there of like, your only craft is deception, you even deceive yourself, the rings, like they control you, and like my last words. All of that stuff was very strong. He does end on like, I said the title, the Lord of the Rings, that's the thing. That was his last words. So I was like, all right, a little on the nose there, but it was again this nice foreshadowing of what's going to happen in the Lord of the Rings proper, in the main trilogy. So a very strong ending to Celebrimbor. Again, they're back and forth this whole season, and Celebrimbor himself, I think, was just such a really great character and a really strongly acted character. So what a wonderful end and a tragic end, and the visuals in all the sequences, like him being pinned up against the pillar, was great. And you know that he's right. Sauron deceives himself, and his search for power is ultimately his undoing. The only bit of it about it I didn't like was the line, like, one person will be your undoing. Yes, kind of. Frodo is his undoing, or you could even say Isildur, whoever is his undoing, whoever you want to talk about it as. But I don't like this, like, one person will bring you down. I like the idea better of, like, it was a fellowship of people working together and friendship, like Sam and Frodo and even Gollum in there, Smeagol. A lot of those, it was more than one person. So I didn't like that line as much, kind of runs against my sensibilities. But the rest of it, always great. Next beat, Adar's death, and I loved him like getting to look like an elf again, and again, I kind of called this a few episodes ago, but I if this was the arc that I said a few episodes ago, like if this is the arc they're going for, I love it, and I did love it. This tragedy of there could have been peace between elves and Uruk, elves and orcs. There could have been something greater, but because of Sauron's manipulations and the orcs and Adar's sort of mistakes along the way, blinded by revenge for Sauron, he fails to succeed in what could have been, and the orcs fall to the darkness. And there's all talking like oh, how dare the orcs get humanized. But here I like it because it's not that an entire race of people sort of deserve something, but it puts a little bit of a, well, they did choose it. And yes, there's manipulations on Sauron's part, and it's not there, and ultimately they don't deserve to be treated like shit as they are, but there is this tragedy in that choice of the manipulations and what could have been, and that humanization makes their fall to the dark side, as it were, all the more tragic. In Sauron's seeking of power, and really the race that suffers perhaps the most, even because of everything that Sauron has done, despite being the ones that he uses the most. And we see that very clearly when he kills that one orc who comes up to him, the little orc guy that we've been following all episode. So sad, tragic storyline there that I did really love and I'm sad. And there's also, I'm sure, the speculation as to who Adar's identity is. I know I saw online of like some speculation of who he is from Silmarillion. It's been a long time since I read the Silmarillion. I remember the broad beats of it, and some specific things like Celebrimbor's death that I really love, but it's been a long time since I read it, so I don't remember who he might be alluding to be. But I like that they don't name it. It would have been one of those like, I am blah moments that most people in the audience would be like, huh? And ultimately, it would be like a nerdy Easter egg. And ultimately, here it's played more as like, my name didn't matter. I earned this name. And I like, again, choosing your name, another the trans theme in there. Let's do something about it. And so it lays more in the thematic and the character, and rather than in like an Easter egg for fans. And I really liked that. That's a nuance that I really love. I love that it's not like, I was Khan, from Star Trek. It doesn't beat you over the head with that. So like, it leaves room open to the super nerds to go in and like speculate as to his identity, but like, he's probably this character. I know he's this guy. But it's not so much to feel like it's ostracizing a segment of the audience that doesn't know it. And also, still reads thematically and through the character. So just a really nice job, I think, threading that needle on doing that. But again, very tragic end for him. I'm sad about it because I think Adar was the character that I was really interested in, and I think this is a good end for him. It fits, but it makes me sad. We also have a little bit with the Elrond and Gil-galad and Arondir. Hey, Arondir didn't die. Awesome. Glad. Hopefully they'll be able to get him something interesting to do next season. Now that Adar is dead and he's with the main group of elves. But I did find the burning of all of the knowledge of Celebrimbor was really sad. It reminded me of the burning of the Library of Alexandria. This loss of knowledge, this loss of the history. You can't always get, again, going to Poppy's speech, you can't always fix things. You kind of have to build something new. It's a very tragic thing. I mean, I was reading, just an aside, I was reading Octavia Butler's Dawn from the Exogenesis trilogy, otherwise known as Lilith Brood's trilogy, recently. And the thing that just viscerally caught me off, not to spoil the books too much, but there's a moment in there where, this is right at the beginning, it's about an alien species that takes humans and says, hey, we're going to breed with you, and sort of comes up from there. But one of the major parts of that was the alien species like, hey, we'll save you after you destroyed Earth, but we're not going to give you any of your knowledge of your forebears. And just I had such a visceral reaction to that. I'm like, oh, what a cruel thing. What a cruel thing to cut people off from that. And it just made me think about that. And honestly, just thinks that a lot of imperialism and slavery colonialism has done a lot of that throughout history to a lot of different groups. And what a cruelty that is. That Sauron and colonial systems throughout history would do that. Even beyond just the outright genocides and murders. So yeah, just made me think about that. So I thought that beat landed and it had a visceral reaction from me. And then the Galadriel stuff worked really well. The battle between her and Sauron, I loved. I'm glad she got some badass moments with him and got to show him up. She obviously didn't win the fight, but it was the beats of that and all the different versions of him trying to manipulate her with the different visions of people. Landed really well. I know for a lot of people, the treatment of Galadriel on this show is not something that they've really liked, and I certainly understand that. A very strong female character in Tolkien who was a badass, sort of getting manipulated by a dude a lot of the time. So I'm glad here she got to show off her badass sword fighting skills, and yes, lose, but show him up. And I thought that was a strong beat for her on the whole. The fact that she survives that huge fall, we'll just chalk it up to elf powers, and Elrond getting to put on the ring, which is a big deal for him because we know he does wear a ring, and choosing to do it because he wants to save a friend. Love that beat. It helps fix their sort of relationship a little bit. I thought that was really strong. And then the final ending beat, again, of this look to the light, very Tolkien-esque theme. I thought a very beautiful ending and one that gets me raring to go for season 3 of yeah, we'll kick some butt. Though I didn't like that Galadriel didn't answer the question. She's like, well, remember there's light, and I would just be like, but Sword of Shield, though. Do you want to fight, or you didn't answer the question, Galadriel. You just stated a really nice theme. But yeah, a strong ending on that point, a strong ending for the season. I think that's everything. I think there may be some things here and there that I could think about, but like I said, this season wasn't perfect. I've had my problems with it, and certainly there's a lot you could go into critique, but on the whole, I really loved it, and I loved the characters, loved the acting, loved the story, loved the world, and I think they've done a really beautiful job capturing the heart of Tolkien. That was one little thing that I wanted to mention. When Celebrimbor's dying, he bemoans the fact that he can't hear the kingfishers. Again, very Tolkien thing of isn't it said that nature has been hurt? And the same thing with Numenor. They're it's just trees. Obviously, we know the Ents and the Entwives are out there, so it's not just trees. But again, the very environmentalist side of Tolkien coming out there. So I love those beats. So yeah, all of that stuff just in this season. I think they, as much as they may have some of the plotting, some of the character beats, some of the moments didn't always land, I think the heart of what Tolkien's trying to say is very much beating throughout this series in so many ways. And the characters are really strong. The actors are really strong. The visuals are very beautiful. I think it does a lot. It shows how much all that stuff adds up. So even when the writing is good, but not always perfect, those other things carry a lot of it and still make for a very strong series that I really love and really adore. So yeah, I like I said, I love this show. I won't be embarrassed about it. I think it's really a show that has become one of my favorites, even if I know it's imperfect. But I love imperfect things, as do we all. We don't love things because they are perfect. So yeah, I will end there. I hope y'all, my friends, live long and prosper.